The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All right, so the first day of March Madness was not as mad as it often is, though we did have your obligatory 12-5 upset with McNeese getting by number 5 Clemson. And we got the Pitino-Calipari matchup that I think everybody wants to see. That's going to happen tomorrow as Arkansas took care of business against Kansas in a 10-7. And no problem for St. John's over Omaha, winning by 30 points. So we got all that. And then we got Maryland getting started today, but that's only part of the story. The real story is what's going on with the head coach, Kevin Willard. That's some real live drama. There'll be some drama on the court this afternoon when they play Grand Canyon, but I think Kevin Willard is about to pull off a big power play, which I can't remember seeing before. Things are a lot different in college basketball. We'll talk about Will Wade, who's the coach at McNeese, who also had an upset, who had the upset yesterday in the 12-5. And he's been, very transparent about that he's talking to NC State. He said so. Have you talked to NC State? Yes. And it's pretty clear that he's told his players, look, let's win as many games as we can. I'm going to go to NC State, and I'm going to take some of you with me. That's the way it works in college basketball these days. But what's happening with Maryland is really intriguing and some very strategic work, I think, on the part of Kevin Willard, and we'll get to that in a second. But the big news in town, of course, is 888 for number 8.
By Ovechkin, low here to Dubois. And then Riensdyk gets the shot through, rebound, he scores! Alex Ovechkin on the rebound! Airship went down! It's 888 for the Great Eights with 5:35 to go in the first. It's 1-0 Washington.
And the Caps hold on to beat the Flyers 3-2. Not only does Ovechkin get to within 7 of breaking Wayne Gretzky's record with 13 games to play, it's also his 35th of the season. So, meaning if he breaks it this year, that's a hell of a year. 42 goals for a guy who missed 16 games with a broken leg and is 39 years old. Oh my God. And on top of that, the Capitals, who became the last team in the league last year to clinch a playoff spot, are the first to do it. They took care of that last night with some help from some other teams, and they have now made the playoffs in 34 of the last 42 seasons. They have been incredibly consistent, and if you look at the Alex Ovechkin record, that's 20 of the 34 years, and they had a couple of down years before they got him, and that's why you got him, because you were bad enough to draft number 1. And you got to say, with all the up and down of other teams in this town, including the Nationals, who won the World Series in 2019 and have been one of the worst teams in baseball since, finally things are on track for the football team, thanks to the ownership change. But Capitals getting it done. And what they have done this year, I'm not a big hockey guy. I'll be honest about that. But just from the outside, from the broad view, it's kind of what the Commanders did, only they didn't get the generational quarterback in the draft. It's a team that's still got Ovechkin, and I thought they were going to have to drag him along. But no, he's one of their leaders, and they're following his lead. And to be in this position, not only to have him within striking distance of Gretzky with 13 to go, but to have already clinched a playoff spot. Remarkable year. I think Spencer Carberry has to be in consideration for Coach of the Year. I can't tell you who the other contenders might be, but this is far beyond, I think, what even diehard Capitals fans would have expected. So great night for Ovechkin, a great night for the Capitals. They clinch a playoff spot, and they got Florida coming to town tomorrow night. So if you've been if you've been following this, Kevin Willard is reportedly on the radar at Villanova. Villanova fired their coach at the end of the season. He lasted 2 years after replacing Jay Wright. And reports are they would like to hire Kevin Willard, who has a contract through 2028, but it has a buyout, and Villanova apparently is willing to pay the buyout. This was Willard on Sunday with this story circulating. The change had already been made the day before Selection Sunday. So when they had the news conference after it was announced that they were going to play Grand Canyon this afternoon at 4:30 in Seattle, Willard was asked about his contract talks, where they were, and where he expected them to go.
What I can tell you is Damon Evans and I, he hired me. We're on the same page of what we want to do for this program, what we want to do for this university. His focus and my focus are exactly the same. So our focus right now is strictly the NCAA tournament and this team. But all I can say to that is that me and Damon are on the same page, and we always have.
Well, yeah, that might have been Sunday, but the pages may have changed in the last few days. Because yesterday, when Willard held his news conference to preview this afternoon's game in Seattle, and this was, I guess, some timid reporters, but they finally got to the point. There were a couple of questions asked. One was about, how good Derek Queen has been this year. The other was about the travel to the West Coast. They went out there earlier this year and had a miserable time as they lost to a bad Washington team and Oregon, and this time different. And then he was asked a question that he was ready to pounce on. This was Kevin Willard yesterday in Seattle.
It is that time of year where,
Took you guys 3 questions.
I wanted to ask about the basketball too.
Okay.
But, obviously your name has come up as a candidate for various positions because Maryland has done so well this year. Have you felt compelled to address any of that with your team at all about your future at Maryland?
Yeah, I've addressed it with them directly. I'll say this. This is Damon and I talked on Sunday night right before Selection Sunday. He gave me a term sheet right before Selection Sunday. I really wasn't focused on it. Been focused on this team and this. Damon's talked to my agent. I talked to Damon this morning at length about where we are. Obviously, it's difficult right now because I think we know his situation. He's probably going to SMU, so it's kind of tough to negotiate with somebody that's maybe not here. But I need to make fundamental changes to the program. That's what I'm focused on right now. That's why probably a deal hasn't got done, because I want to see, I need to see fundamental changes done. I want this program to be great. I want it to be the best in the country. I want to win a national championship, but there's things that need to change. When you're at a place for 3 years and you put your heart and soul into it, you kind of sit there and say, okay, wait a second, for us to be really successful, X, Y, and Z needs to change. And first and foremost, I need to make sure that we are where we are with NIL, and rev share is not where we've been with NIL in the past 2 years. We've been one of the worst, if not lowest, in the NIL in the last 2 years. So that's first and foremost. I also have to make a fundamental change where I can do the things that I want to do with my program. I wanted to spend an extra night in New York this year to celebrate Christmas with my team, and I was told that we can't do that because it's too expensive. So I don't know how we can be a top-tier program and I can't spend one extra night in New York because it's too expensive. So there's fundamental things I'm fighting for my team and my program. It's not so much about me. I want to make sure that whatever we do going forward, we're successful, and we're successful at the highest rate. So I'm confident that we'll get things done. It's a little difficult right now, I'm not going to lie. But I'm confident that no matter who we're negotiating with at the end of the day, this program is going to be in a great spot. And that's really my focus, is this tournament, this team, and this program.
Kevin, talking about those fundamental changes, do you feel like Maryland's, the last few years been operating like a basketball school, or do you think it needs to, take the next step in that regard?
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, this is a phenomenal program with an unbelievable history. But like I said, it's simple. When you've been somewhere for 3 years, and I love it here, you're going to find things that need to be changed. And right now, I think I have to take the fact that I think I have an opportunity to make sure that I make fundamental changes to what I believe we need to do to be successful. It's not. Our fan base is unbelievable. Our donors are unbelievable. It's just sometimes you get in when you get into the nuts and bolts of a program, you sit there and say, okay, can we make these changes? And let's make these changes for the best.
That was about 3.5 minutes of, in my mind, mind-boggling stuff. I have attended or listened to thousands of news conferences over the years, and there have been some that have knocked my socks off. This one is right up there. Let's realize what Kevin Willard did there. Now, he's backed by this offer from Villanova that he's apparently willing to take. And the big difference between Villanova and Maryland is this. Villanova's not a football school. They have a football team, but it's like what used to be 1AA. I think it's FCS. That's basketball school. And they've won national championships. They'd like to win more national championships. They had a coach that was winning national championships, but he looked at the way the game is run these days with NIL and transfer portal and said, I've had enough, and he went to do television. They replaced him. The new guy didn't do the job, so now Willard's on the radar, and he knows they want him, and I guess he has assurances that he's going to get the kind of things that he wants to build a national championship program, which they've had in recent decades, or I think they won 2 of them over the last 12 years or something like that. So he knows he can win there. And he's at Maryland, where, yes, it has always been a basketball school, but the money is in football. The Big Ten contract revolves mainly around football, and even though Maryland is at best mediocre, a good season for them is when they win 7 or 8 games and go to a mediocre bowl. They're not going to be a national championship contender anytime soon, and probably never. So he's looking at this like, hey, I'm the guy that's going to win here, and I want to win championships, and I got to have the money to do that. And he went as far as to do 2 things. One, air dirty laundry. You know, that's something that you normally don't hear. He's talking about a game that they played December 21st in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center when they beat Syracuse, and he wanted to stay another night in New York to celebrate Christmas. Now, realize that's December 21st. It's not like, it was Christmas Eve and he wanted to spend Christmas Day. He wanted to have a Christmas-like celebration in New York, which is great. I mean, if you've ever been in the city at that time of year, it's wonderful. But it wasn't like, hey, my guys don't have anywhere to go. Can we spend another night in a hotel to celebrate Christmas? It was before Christmas. So he didn't necessarily have to air that dirty laundry. And no matter how much money the program is making, if I were making the call, I'm not sure I would have approved that anyway. I mean, I don't really see the need to do that. But, okay, he wanted to do that. And now he's saying, yeah, they wouldn't even give me another night in a hotel. All right. The most important thing is he threw Damon Evans out. He threw him out the door. It's only been reported that Damon Evans is talking to SMU. He says Damon Evans is likely to go to SMU. So he's thrown him out. He apparently did not want to negotiate with him. I'm sure it was Evans who made the call. No, you can't spend the extra night in the hotel in New York. Sorry. So he's throwing him out the door, and what he's saying to whoever is going to negotiate with him, whether that's a new athletic director named Quickly or whether it's the school president or somebody else involved in money, he's saying to them, this is what I'm going to have here because I can easily hop up the road to Villanova. I'm familiar with that part of the country. I coached at Seton Hall for 12 years. I'm from New York. I'm not going to have any problem in Philadelphia. And maybe, look, he may be more comfortable as a city guy anyway because Maryland is not really a city school. It's in College Park. It is in the metropolitan area here, which is a big city. But he may feel like, Villanova might be an easier place to win. I like it here. I've established something, but this is college basketball in an era where it's totally different than the way it was 5 years ago. And I got to have a lot of money. He said we're near the bottom in NIL. I don't know whether that's true or not, but, that's a big factor. You got the cash. You can recruit players. Rick Pitino has got his team as a 2 seed and moving into the second round off a blowout last night because he got $4 million to pay his players. And he's got a sugar daddy. It's the billionaire who started Vitamin Water and Body Armor and sold it to Pepsi or maybe it was Coca-Cola for billions of dollars. So he's got that. And Willard is saying, I don't have that guy here. Maybe it's going to be Steve Bisciotti. I don't know. Bisciotti, who owns the Ravens. He was close to Gary Williams, and maybe Gary helps to make that happen. I don't know how it's going to go. But this is a power play that was, I think, very well executed. And it's a no-lose for Willard because if they go, well, sorry, we got to dedicate resources to football because football is really what drives the bus in terms of revenue, and we really can't meet your demands, and we have a great program, a great history here, so we'll get another coach. And that could easily happen. And, you wouldn't want to lose him. But on the other hand, the way college basketball goes these days, you got Will Wade, who's headed to NC State to replace the coach who was in, the Final Four last year. And you could have a great year one year and a crapola year the next year. And I can remember conversations at this time last year before this excellent season that Maryland has had going into the tournament as a 4 seed. I remember having conversations with people, could they possibly buy out Kevin Willard? Yeah, people wanted to do that. They finished below 500. That's not an acceptable season for Maryland. And now, Villanova wants him, and they want to pay him a lot of money, so they got to find a way to keep him and meet his demands, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm not saying he's not a terrific coach. I'm not saying he hasn't done a great job this year. But this is all about leverage, and he's got the leverage right now, and he's using it. But I've never seen this in this type of situation. He doesn't mention the name Villanova, but it's clear he's got a place to go. And he'd be very happy to go there if things don't work out here. And if they don't meet the demands of giving him more money and giving him things that he wants, like allowing his team to spend an extra night in a hotel, supposedly to celebrate Christmas when it's 4 days before Christmas, and it's New York. It's not like a cross-country flight that they have to take to get back home. He wants those things, and if he doesn't get it, he's going to go. And by the way, saying this also in not so many words, but saying, I'm through with Evans. So, Evans, you better get him off to SMU because if he's thinking about, using SMU as leverage to come back to Maryland for more money, no. He's gone. He's gone there. Now, SMU has a lot of cash. They got so much money. They joined the ACC, and they didn't even care about the revenue that they were getting from the conference. That's the way they roll. I worked in that area. I worked in Dallas. I know the oil people there and the cash that they have. So they'll pay Evans, but very well executed by Kevin Willard. We'll see what this does. I don't think it's going to affect this team. I don't think that they're focused on this. Basketball these days, it's a one-year business. And 2 of the biggest stars on the team, one Queen, he's going to the NBA, and Julian Reese, he's finally out of eligibility. He's a dinosaur. He stayed 4 years at the same school. So they don't care whether Willard stays or goes after this year. This is not a long-term investment, and they got, I think, a couple of guys who are coming back next year or may come back, or maybe they'll follow him to Villanova. That's the way things work. But this is how the college basketball coaching game is played in 2025, that Willard strategically used the leverage that he's got to go to Villanova to say to Maryland, hey, 1, Evans gots to go. Out. Number 2, you better give me more money, and you better let me do things that I want to do, like keep my team in a hotel for an extra night in New York. You better not be so chintzy about that. Whew. That was one of those where I'm sure he sat down after the news conference, popped open a beer, and went, well done. Well done. All right, coming up, we got a little football thing to get to, which I think was cute yesterday from a news conference out in Ashburn. And you saw you heard, and maybe if you saw this online, you heard what Kevin Willard had to say about his situation. Will Wade, he's leaving. He's not hiding that. In the meantime, they're winning. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Busy news conference day in Ashburn yesterday. They introduced a number of players that they had either signed or traded for. They've been doing that this week, getting those out of the way before they start off-season workouts next month. And we'll get to Deebo Samuel. He said all the right things yesterday. Probably the biggest offseason pickup. Laramie Tunsil also in a trade. Both of those guys coming here in the latter stages of their career and hoping that they have something left and get extended contracts. Deebo's contract is interesting. He was guaranteed $17.5 million, but they threw in $3 million worth of incentives, which was basically a way to soothe maybe any possible bad feelings about the fact they're not going to extend his contract. So they said, okay, you want to make more money? Go earn it. We're throwing in $3 million worth of incentives so he can make as much as, $20.5 million this year. The only news yesterday was they signed another receiver, Michael Gallup, who was a third-round pick of the Cowboys in 2018, played 6 years for them, was due to play for the Raiders last year, had signed a one-year deal, and then decided to retire. Didn't play last year. So he's back, and they're hoping that he can give them something. He's been productive. Now, again, sitting out a year, we don't know what effect that's going to have. But in Dallas, he averaged 44 catches, 600 yards, and 3.5 touchdowns a year, and never fumbled. So that's a good pickup there. But the funniest thing that happened yesterday, they were talking to Cleveland Farrell, who has re-signed. He's from Virginia, says it's good to be close to home. He likes all that. But he went to Clemson. He was a great player at Clemson. And while he's doing his news conference, the Clemson-McNeese game is going on. And Clemson was god-awful. Don't let the final score fool you. McNeese held on to win by 2, 69-67. But Clemson had 13 points in the second half. They were absolutely terrible. And, I think at one point it got to close to 25 or 28 points. A big lead for McNeese, and it was pointed out during the news conference for Farrell what was happening to his alma mater, Clemson, and here's how he reacted.
No, actually, you know what? I'm really not. Who is that? What team is that? Who is that?
McNeese. McNeese used to be McNeese State.
Well, we're a football school. 3-time national championship Clemson Tigers, NCAA football. We're a football school, and shout out to my guys on the Clemson basketball team, man. You know, it be some tough years out there, but don't worry, the rain got to stop at some point.
Nice pivot there, yeah. Like, oh, what's happening? Oh, McNeese State. Well, we're really a football school. Nicely done. And then won a national championship in a while, but they have won them. I guess he was on one of those teams. I think he was on one of the Clemson championship teams. Anyway, the team that was beating his alma mater, McNeese, they're coached by Will Wade, who's one of the real interesting stories of this tournament. He's at McNeese not because he couldn't coach at the higher level. Oh, no. College basketball was a lot different then. There were actual recruiting violations. So while he won a lot at LSU, he got pushed out the door. There was an investigation, and they came up with something in 2022 and said, you gots to go. So he goes to McNeese, where all he's done is won. And it's now here's the interesting part of this. It was reported earlier this week that he's agreed to go to North Carolina State. That's the school that fired its coach after they made the Final Four last year. He's agreed to go there. And that as soon as the season is over, it's done. He's out the door. And when asked, have you talked to North Carolina State, he said, yes, I did. Now, his agent does that, but, it's a contract that's in the works right now, although it has not been signed, which makes it even more interesting because now that they've won, now that they've knocked off a number 5 seed Clemson, they got Purdue coming up tomorrow. If they beat Purdue, they're in the Sweet 16, and are more schools interested in picking him up? He can clearly coach, and the cheating that used to go on, that's irrelevant now because cheating ain't cheating anymore. This was Wade yesterday after his team advanced, and on the focus that he may or may not have had going into this game.
I mean, I've been focused on the game. I mean, they'll tell you. I mean, I've been on one about the game. I mean, so whatever else is happening, that's of no distraction to us. I know everybody else, thinks that there's distractions and stuff. We operate the same way all the time. And so we hadn't operated any differently. The walkthrough hadn't been, nothing's been any different. So, there hadn't been a lot of emotion. It's been narrow focus. The bigger the game, the narrower your focus. And it's been absolute narrow focus on winning our first NCAA tournament game at McNeese State and continuing to change. This is just huge for our school. Our enrollment's up 3%. Our applications are up 10%. And we've gotten, freaking $25 million worth of free advertising the last couple weeks. I mean, our stuff's going to go through the roof. It's going to change our area. I mean, it changes our 5 parish areas, changes everything. So, that's what our focus has been. And we've broken every record in the book. This was the last one to get. We want to keep this going.
Meaning the last one being they'd never won a tournament game before. So McNeese has won a tournament game. They've moved on. They could get to the Sweet 16. Also, what he's told his players is, and he said this in a lengthy interview that he did a couple of days ago, he said, look, you guys want to play Power 5 basketball? Let's keep winning, and then you'll come with me where I go. And so he's not hiding the fact that he's going for another job. And, again, with college basketball being year to year, these guys, some stay for a longer period of time, but they're free to go if they don't like the new coach that's coming in. And in some cases, like, the other big upset that happened yesterday, number 11 Drake, where they beat Missouri. Drake's coach went to West Virginia. Now he's moved on to Indiana, so that's 3 jobs in 3 years, DeVries. He's been replaced by a Division II coach who took 4 of his Division II players with him, and they won their league, and now they pull off an upset of Missouri, and they may have a chance to beat Texas Tech tomorrow. Division II players. They just go from place to place to place. So a coach moving on, no big deal. Players are moving on. Who cares? It's all about the money chase. Players can chase money now. Coaches can chase money now. And the days of knowing your players, 4-year players like Julian Reese, those days are coming to an end, and they're coming to an end quickly. Todd Golden is the new coach at Florida. They're a number 1 seed, and I've heard Jay Billis say they may be the best team in the tournament. And if Maryland is going to get past the Sweet 16 and into the 8, if they have real designs on getting to the Final Four, they would likely have to go through Florida. Maryland will play Grand Canyon today. If they win that, they'll play the winner of Memphis and Colorado State on Sunday. Meantime, Florida's got 16 seed Norfolk State tonight. They should take care of business easily there. And then they would play the winner of UConn and Oklahoma. Assuming they get to that, that could be a possible Sweet 16 matchup between Maryland and Florida next week. Golden last night on the Scott Van Pelt show on ESPN, and he talked about how he, there was no camera. If you're watching Selection Sunday, there was no camera on the Florida team. The reason for that was they had won the SEC tournament and they were hightailing it out of town to go home. And Golden actually informed his players on the charter flight home that they had a number 1 seed and that they were going to open on Friday against Norfolk State. This is Golden recounting that with SVP last night.
Well, we were trying to learn from last year. Last year we played in the championship game and fell a little short to Auburn, and we stayed in Nashville to watch the show, and we didn't get home until like 1 or 2 o'clock, and we were pretty fatigued. So this year we knew we were going to be in, and we're like, let's just make sure we get back as fast as possible. And we ended up taking off about 5 minutes before the selection show started. So timing could have been a little bit better. Fortunately, our pilots were great. They were communicating with air traffic control, and they were able to get us our first round matchup. And we announced it to the team that way. It was a pretty special moment.
You play in a league that's beyond rugged. I mean, it's outrageous. 14 teams make the tournament. And throughout the year, you all have been highly ranked. But I do think, Todd, that people talk more about Bama and more about Auburn and maybe more about Tennessee for a while. I don't think you can be ranked as high as you guys got and be underappreciated, but I am interested. Does the fact that maybe people are paying attention to other teams in your league fuel your guys on this run we've seen over the last couple months?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. We kind of felt like we were flying under the radar a little bit, and we went undefeated in non-conference play. But it wasn't really until the middle of conference, beating Tennessee actually early in conference play. But then that win at Auburn was, I think, what kind of woke people up a little bit about our crew and that we had a real chance to have a special season. And, obviously after the success we had this past weekend, we're not flying under the radar anymore. Now we're going to have to make sure that we handle success really well going into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but my man Stanford Steve and I, we have a podcast, and it was the middle of about February where we were like, look, the SEC is nasty, but the best team in that conference is Florida. And now it feels like the world is on that train. So as the guy who's got to keep everybody's heads out of the cloud, feet on the ground, and focus on the 16 that you play, trying to win 6 games, what concerns you about that when the whole world's saying, man, the Gators going to win the whole thing?
Honestly, it's new for us, being kind of the talk of the town. And I talked to my team about it yesterday. I was like, listen, this is a new variable that we have to, account for, and we got to make sure we handle success the right way. But the great thing is we have a really mature group, led by our 3 senior perimeter players, Walter Clayton, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin. And those guys aren't going to let us look too far ahead. They have one goal, and that's to win a national championship. And our guys understand that we can't get anywhere close to where we want to unless we play well against Norfolk State on Friday.
Your guards, you just mentioned them, are all nasty, and that's where every conversation starts, and it ought to. But, Todd, I feel like the depth that you have in your front court is unusual, maybe unique. You can run so many different options of guys, and I just am interested in the process of figuring out rotations. It's great to have that kind of depth, but what was that like for you to figure out, all right, this guy with this guy, maybe not that guy? Like, what happens with that?
The great thing is that all 4 of the guys that we're playing right now, with Sam Alexis being out due to injury, they're all pretty interchangeable. Obviously, Ruben Chinyelu is a little unique, incredibly physical, just dominates the low block. But, Micah Hanlockton, Alex Condon, Tommy Houck, all those guys are really skilled players, and they can play out on the floor a little bit. And so we like to interchange them. And, all 4 of those guys, can play with a different partner and play really well. And, we like to start Alex and Ruben together, and then we bring Tommy and Micah in together. And then we generally end the game with Tommy and Kondo if they're playing well and out of foul trouble. But they all do a great job, and they are the unsung heroes of our team. They've been elite all year, just providing great physicality, a high ceiling on the boards. They do a great job protecting the rim for us, and those guys have been really special.
This team that you have, you mentioned the bigs, most of whom can pick and pop, go out and shoot threes if necessary. Like it goes back to really when you got on my radar, which is when everybody figured out this guy's a star in the game, and that's what it's San Francisco. And you had an analytic approach that felt new. And now it feels like the world's kind of caught up. Are you kind of looking around going like, what took y'all so long? Like, this is the way the game is played.
Yeah, we did some pretty unique things out there at San Francisco, and enjoyed our time out there, and it was fantastic. And honestly, we were doing a lot of the same things here at Florida, trying to think of unique and intentional ways to take advantage and find the advantages in the margins. And, we try to zig when other people zag. We play 2 bigs, which is unique. A lot of people like to play 4 out, even 5 out, especially with the way the NBA game has gone. And all of our front court players, I feel like, have potential to play in the NBA, to be honest. But, playing that size, I think takes advantage of teams that try to play a little smaller. We're really, really good on the glass, and we dominate that way. But, we're just trying to stay on the cutting edge. We're trying to be unique. We're trying to find the advantages when we can. And knock on wood, we've done a good job of it so far here at Florida.
All right, Todd, let's get to what's important here. I mean, it's the reason why you and I had to speak. You're the 1 seed, all right? My alma mater is the 4, okay? So my wife is a Gator, all right? My entire extended family are Gators. I told you before we started, I was surrounded last week when we were out in Colorado skiing, and I didn't get the big TV because they were all watching the Gators. That's fine. I had this sinking feeling, Todd, that there was a possibility that if you guys win a couple and if my alma mater wins a couple, it could be Florida and Maryland. And as a dad, I ask you this. What do I tell my children? Because they're going to need to make a choice, and choices have consequences. And I need to know as a dad what my message to my children is if this game comes to pass.
I think it's pretty simple. I think you just explained to them how proud you are to be a Maryland alum and how great of a job Coach Willard's done to get his team into the Sweet 16, which is where we would match up.
Okay.
But at the same time, you're an amazing husband, and you want to be there, be a great supportive wife and a great family man. And it's really important to see the Gators continue to grow and get back to the top of the mountain. So in this situation, you'd be totally okay with the Maryland loss if we're both fortunate enough to meet together, because you're really, really excited for your wife and how well the Gators are playing right now.
That was really well done. But that's absolutely not the proper way to go about it, Todd. It's going to be, listen, you can ride with Mom if you want. But you know what? You're right. And listen, it'd be cool if it happened, because you should know that the little guy, his room's orange and blue, okay? There's a Gator flag on the wall. And they're going to ride with Mom when push comes to shove, and you know what? They should. But and that's way down the road. I know you're worried about Norfolk State. Maryland's worried about trying to figure out Grand Canyon. We'll worry about that down the road.
Well, and there's this issue in my family. My daughter went to Wisconsin. My son-in-law went to Maryland. They're going to play on a fairly regular basis. Now, I would think most times in football they meet. Wisconsin's got the edge. But in basketball, you never know going forward. So their two children, my two grandchildren, Eliza and Aaron, they may face some of this down the road. And my son, who got married in November, he went to Indiana, and his wife went to Duke. And if and when they have children, they may face the same kind of dilemma if Indiana gets back to prominence in basketball and Duke stays on top. Such family issues that you have to deal with when sports run your life. That was fun. All right, coming up in the next hour, some yak from Ashburn, what Deebo Samuel said about joining the Commanders. Also, the crazy stuff that we go through, well, wasn't last year, but 2 years ago. Here we go again with Aaron Rodgers. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. You know, it's almost become the annual rite of early spring. What is Aaron Rodgers going to do? Is he going to stay with the Green Bay Packers? Is he going to retire? What happens when he comes out of the cone of darkness? Will he agree to a trade with the New York Jets? Oh, my God. Oh, the Jets cut him loose. Where is he going to go? Is he going to go to the Giants? Is he going to go to the Steelers? I think he wants to go to the Minnesota Vikings, but do the Vikings really want him or not? Quarterbacks are a rare commodity, especially Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And apparently they are willing to wait it out in Minnesota, never mind what they've said publicly. It is just the dance that people do with Aaron Rodgers, who, and there was a report this week from, I forget, it was one of these trade, maybe it was Front Office Sports, might have been Front Office Sports. They said, yeah, the networks want Aaron Rodgers, but he's insufferable. Like, the juice ain't worth the squeezing. They think he'd be a good network analyst, but just the way he does things, it's like, we'll have to see. I really don't know. I need to go to the beach. I need to meditate. Enough already. And while the Minnesota Vikings have said they're out, they may not necessarily be out. And you got the Pittsburgh Steelers to the point where one of their star players is saying, look, either you want to play for us or not. Craig Hayward, who's a great defensive lineman for them. Not Craig Hayward. That was his dad. I forget his first name. It's Hayward. He said, you either want to play for the Steelers or you don't. And then the Giants, the only quarterback they've got under contract is Tommy DeVito. It's nuts. It's nuts. And we'll take a further look at that coming up in about 20 minutes. Diana Rossini of The Athletic was on with Dan Patrick, and she's on top of this and fills in all the gory details or all the creepy details that go along with that. Got some football stuff to talk about with what's going on in Ashburn. A lot of news conferences in the last couple of days, and that the guys coming in and they're all excited. Everything has changed in a year. This is the place that everybody wants to be. This is the place that nobody wanted to be before. As a matter of fact, there's a really good story from, it's been 20 years or more now, when the Lavernius Coles played with the Redskins, then Redskins, and he was unhappy. He had 90 catches in Joe Gibbs' first year back, but he had only one touchdown, and he had hardly any yardage. All they were doing was throwing him 10-yard passes, and that's not what he wanted to do. So he got himself traded to the Jets. He wanted to be out. He'd come from the Jets, and he wanted out. And Dan Snyder famously said something like, "We'll buy you a flat screen TV and you'll sit and watch." But they granted him his wish. They traded him. He went back to the Jets where he'd come from, and Santana Moss came here. And Cole said to Moss, "You've had a really great career. Now it's time to get paid." Not, hey, you're coming to a great organization where you can win a championship. No. This is where you get paid. This is a place you can win. This is a win place now. And we'll talk about what Deebo Samuel said yesterday. But I did want to mention this Jackie Robinson story, which somehow has become political. Mina Kimes did like a parting shot at the end of Around the Horn the other day and, pointed out the ridiculousness of removing site, the Pentagon site where they talked about the heroic act that Jackie Robinson did in baseball and also, of course, serving in the military. Tells the story of his refusal in 1944 to move to the back of an Army bus. Military police took him into custody. He was acquitted during a court-martial and then transferred to Kentucky's Camp Breckinridge and was a coach for the athletic teams until he was honorably discharged in November of 1944. And then, the rest of his story and going to the Brooklyn Dodgers and breaking the color line and so forth. The Pentagon press secretary, or I should now say the former Pentagon press secretary, John Ulyat, who has now been assigned to quote-unquote special projects, he said in making it right that they restored it, like, we made a mistake here. He said, "We do not view or highlight them." That would mean, I guess, people who were heroes like Jackie Robinson or the Navajo Code Talkers, the Tuskegee Airmen. We do not view or highlight them through the prism of immutable characteristics such as race, ethnicity, or sex. We do so only by recognizing their patriotism and dedication to the warfighting mission like every other American who has worn the uniform. Okay, so he's saying, all we're looking at is his service. It doesn't matter about his color. Doesn't matter that there was incredible discrimination in this country in the 1940s. And at that time, if he wanted to play baseball in the major leagues, he couldn't because he was born ineligible because he was black at the time. Okay, so this is him saying, no. This is it's all equality. We're looking at the same thing. Then, before the article was restored, when asked about the reason for the removal of the story on the Defense Department website on Robinson's military service, Ulyat said the following in a statement to ESPN. As Secretary Hegseth has said, DEI is dead at the Defense Department. And then he changes what DEI means, which is diversity, equality, and inclusion, and comes up with this disgusting words for these initials. He calls it discriminatory equity ideology, a form of woke cultural Marxism that has no place in our military. It divides the force, erodes unit cohesion, and interferes with the service's core warfighting mission. We are pleased by the rapid compliance across the department with the directive removing DEI content from all platforms. In the rare cases that content is removed either deliberately or by mistake, that is clearly out of an outlined scope of the directive. Okay, so again, he makes a disgusting series of words for what DEI does stand for. And let's realize this. Jackie Robinson was a DEI hire. He was hired in a diversity, equity, and inclusion move by Branch Rickey because he wanted to win, number one, but also it was time after nearly a half a century of vicious discrimination against African-American baseball players. And yes, Jackie Robinson on merit was good enough to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was Rookie of the Year and went to the Hall of Fame, but he couldn't play unless somebody made a move based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's why we've had to have diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's carried over to this day. It didn't become obsolete. It is still very much needed. And what Jackie Robinson did was blaze a trail with the help of DEI. And for this guy, who's now, I guess, been either demoted, removed, whatever you want to call it, he's now in charge of, quote-unquote, special projects, to call it discriminatory equity ideology is a form of woke cultural Marxism. Fie on you. Fie on you. You're disgusting, and you're not in charge of public relations anymore. Even he was too low for whatever they're doing here. So, to me, Jackie Robinson will always be a DEI hire, should be celebrated as a DEI hire, and proof that DEI actually works and works well and does not divide, as he says there. Okay? That's where I stand on that. If that's political, go ahead. But to me, that's humanity. That's not anything that's political. All right, to Deebo Samuel, who has come to Washington. Now, what they did, I would say, I don't know if pacify is exactly the word, but his contract calls for $17.5 million. Had he stayed with the 49ers past tomorrow, they would have owed him a $15.4 million option. Now, he comes to Washington and is not owed any money. Let's say he's 40 pounds overweight when he shows up in training camp. That's not going to happen. But let's suppose he is. They cut him. All they give up is a fifth-round draft pick. They don't owe him any money. But rather than give him a contract extension, which is often done in these cases where you got a guy with 1 year left on his deal, they have put in $3 million in incentives into his contract and guaranteed the salary. So they can't really cut him now based on what they did and not have to pay the money. And on top of that, they're putting in $3 million worth of incentives, and they're saying to him, have a great year. Have a great year. You'll make $20 million, and we'll likely sign you to a contract extension. In coming here, this is what he said was the attraction, which if you've been watching this team for 30 years, that hasn't always been the case.
I like, winners. I like to win. I'm not one of your biggest losers. So they went to the NFC Championship. I've been knowing Adam Peters for a while, and I'm just like, and what's so crazy is kind of close to home than what people think. I was always out there in California. Some of my family live in Baltimore. They got a good team for sure, and they were just standing out.
Yeah, I didn't know he had family in Baltimore, so that might be an attraction for him to stay here as well if he has a terrific year. And then what has been established in 1 year, the standard, that this team's standards had been very, very low, and now they're very, very high.
On my end, it's just like, they put this much trust in me to do the things they did for us, my contract. Like, I can't come in here and let them down. Like, I got to give it my all. I got to, do all the things that I need to do to be the best version of myself when I come here.
So he is added to the wide receiver room, and he will be probably the number 2 receiver. But they got some other guys coming back, like Noah Brown, who caught the Hail Mary. And they also picked up another receiver yesterday. This was, I guess, the only real free agent news. And they didn't have to pay much for him, paid him the veteran minimum, like $1.3 million, Michael Gallup. But Gallup's an interesting story. He's been pretty productive for the Dallas Cowboys. Hasn't been a star there, but has been steady. He's averaged, what do they say, 44 catches in 6 seasons, over 600 yards a year, 14 yards a catch, 3.5 touchdowns a year, and never fumbled, which is huge. And that he decided last year, for whatever reason, he didn't really go into it, but he had signed a contract with the Raiders, and then in training camp said, that's it, I'm going to retire. He's only 28 years old. He's now 29 years old, and not only is he looking forward to playing with Jaden Daniels, but having played with Dallas for 6 years, he's got some familiarity with Terry McLaurin.
When I was playing against Terry, after every encounter we had, Cowboys and the Commanders, I would go up to him after every game, just be like, "Look, dude, you a dog, straight up. I enjoy watching you. Like, that's just what it is. Like, you're fun to watch." So being able to learn from him in this room, learn from Deebo, really any wide receiver, and especially Bobby. He played in the league for 14 years. I mean, that's straight knowledge out there, man. So I still got a lot of room to grow. But me bringing anything to the table, it's just, competitiveness. That's what keeps every room fired up.
Yep, and so it's kind of a changeover. They brought some guys back, but this is going to be number 1 is going to be McLaurin. Number 2 is going to be Deebo Samuel. And then I guess there'll be a big competition for the number 3 spot, and Gallup will certainly be in the mix. Also this, and it's always fun to listen to Tress Way, all the enthusiasm that he has. He's coming back now for, I think it's the 13th year. And, it's also kind of funny to listen to this. He brought his kids with him. I would think he'll finish his career here. I mean, unless there's a big drop-off, because through all the terrible seasons, and there have been some seasons where he's been the MVP, never complained about anything. He's always got this happy demeanor about him. So when they had the news conference for him yesterday to announce his signing, he was just all full of vinegar. And for somebody who had watched what had gone on here, like last year he didn't sign a one-year contract. So prior to this one, this week, the last time that Tress Way had signed, the team was under the ownership of Dan Snyder. And Dan Snyder was not warm and fuzzy. This organization under Josh Harris is warm and fuzzy.
They wanted me to pick a time that I was coming up to re-sign. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, they just get to see DQ and AP and everybody. And I parked the car, and I'm with my family. And, like, the reality of getting my family, opening up car seats and, like, things like that and pulling kids into the facility. And I walk in, and all of our coaches, all the front office, music playing, screaming, yelling, high-fiving, hugs around. I'm just pinching myself, dude. This is so surreal. 12 years here, and I made it a point to just tell AP. I was like, man, I've been here for 12 years. I was like, I didn't even know teams did things like this, and I've never been through it, and I just wanted to take the time to thank them. And so it is such a fun and exciting time to be a part of this franchise, and I've been thankful to be here every year that I've been here. But there's just a lot of special things going on. There's a lot of special people, so I'm honored to be a part of it.
I've been here for 12 years. I didn't know teams did things like this. Of course you didn't. You were in the cesspool of the NFL prior to last year. Of course you didn't know about that. And I don't know if other teams do it this way. Is it necessary? I don't know, but they've had to turn around such an awful feel here that they're probably going a little bit far in the other direction, but it's okay, and it seems to be well received, especially for a family man like Tress Way, bringing his kids out to the news conference. Everybody's happy. And then also this, and I don't quite understand all that goes into this, but he has signed a one-year deal and says the way things work, maybe it's something to do with the amount of years he's been with the team, but the one-year deal is making him happy.
There's this great benefit for veteran players and teams where whenever my agent reached out to me of this one-year deal, she had kind of laid out the details of it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a really cool win-win sort of situation. And she goes, yeah, like it really is. And it's a fun place to be where I kind of pride myself of every day, every practice, every game. I just try to cut it loose, just try and have a whole lot of fun and be thankful in the process. And a one-year deal, I don't know how many one-year deals I'll do, but I'm very excited to do this one, and it's pretty surreal.
Might be guaranteed. Sometimes even a one-year deal doesn't have guaranteed money. And the way it works in the NFL, if you are on the roster for the first game of the season, your money's guaranteed for the year. That's why you'll see a lot of signings in week 2 when you need to fill different spots and whatever injuries you have in week 1. But you might be loading up the practice squad in week 2 because if you're only going to play a guy for 6 games and cut him loose, you're not going to have to pay him for the full season. And that's not going to be an issue with Tress Way, who's such an established veteran here. But, that's kind of the way things work. And in this case, it was to his benefit to sign a one-year deal. Maybe it's because they have so much cap room this year and they don't necessarily have to spread it out over a couple of years. I don't really know how this works. Will Tress Way be around long enough so that when the money really goes up, when they open up the collective bargaining agreement in 2019 and probably double the media money? Yeah, maybe. But, especially on this team where they don't punt, they go for it on 4th down, you can only pay a punter so much money. But you want a guy like Tress Way who's been an all-pro before and an all-pro person. I mean, he's really been supportive, whether this organization has been in a good spot like it is now or when it's been the absolute pits of the NFL. So good for him for getting what he deserves over a long period of time here. 45 years ago today, we asked the question, who shot JR? And we asked it for the next 8 months. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We got Bram coming up at 11 o'clock today. I didn't spend a lot of time on the brackets today. People do that. I had this upset and it didn't happen. And nobody wants to hear, oh, my God, my brackets are busted. So what? It happens every year. Enjoy the games. We got 16 more games today. Did not have any buzzer beaters yesterday. Did have the 2 upsets. The big one was, and this one was the one that surprised me the most because I stupidly said yesterday, well, Will Wade has his foot out the door. I mean, he's gone to NC State. The players know that. He's checked out. No way they're going to win this game. Clemson had a big run last year. I think they were in the Final Four last year. Got close. Anyway, Clemson, a 5 seed, was terrible in the first half. At 13 points in the first half. They lost by 2, but that's because they made a late run. McNeese was pretty much in control of this game, and they move on. We got the 12-5. We had that. And then we had Drake as an 11 seed knocking out Missouri by 10. Other than that, fairly chalky. I don't consider 8-9 an upset. I don't really even consider Arkansas with John Calipari beating a 7 seed Kansas that big an upset, though Kansas was the number one team in the country at the beginning of the year, preseason number 1, and they go out in the first round. And then St. John's beating Omaha gives us what everybody wants to see on Sunday afternoon at 2:30, and that's Calipari playing Pitino. It's Arkansas versus St. John's, and then you got Maryland starting today. Before we get to 45 years ago and who shot JR, this is a really creepy story. When I first saw the headline about a former University of Michigan assistant football coach allegedly hacking into computer accounts, I thought of the Michigas that was going on when Jim Harbaugh was coaching the team, which caused him to be suspended for 6 of the games that Michigan played when they went on to win the national championship 2 years ago. And the assistant coach who was stealing signals and all that, I thought it was just more of that. No. It's much creepier than this. Much creepier than this. This assistant coach allegedly hacked into the accounts of thousands of athletes seeking intimate photos and videos. Name is Matt Weiss. He worked for the Ravens, so had worked for Harbaugh's brother, worked for John Harbaugh, then goes to work for Jim Harbaugh in 2021. He's been charged with 14 counts of unauthorized computer access and 10 counts of identity theft. He was fired in 2023 as co-offensive coordinator when he wouldn't cooperate with the investigation as to what was going on. It says from 2015 to 2023, Weiss gained access to the databases of more than 100 colleges and universities that were maintained by a third-party vendor, and then downloaded personal information and medical data of more than 150,000 athletes. And he was busy in his free time. Then got access to the social media, email, and cloud storage accounts of more than 2,000 athletes, as well as 1,300 students or alumni from schools across the country. And what he was looking for, apparently, was private photos and videos of women, of female athletes. And he kept notes on the photos and videos that he downloaded, commenting on the bodies and sexual preferences, and sometimes returning years later to look for new images. His Ann Arbor home was searched by police in January of 2023, so that's over 2 years ago, shortly before he was fired. He said at the time he was cooperating, looking forward to the matter being resolved. Boy, the ick factor that goes with this sometimes, including the horrible stuff that went on at Michigan State. I mean, just, and this is where these people hide. This is like, Jerry Sandusky. Jerry Sandusky hiding under the clean image of Joe Paterno and having the football camp for kids. Well, this is where these creeps hide out, and you got another one there with access to information that most people wouldn't have because of the fact that he was an assistant coach on a college football team, a major college football team. All right, it was on this day in 1980, 45 years ago today. If you were watching the popular show Dallas, this is how the last episode of the 3rd season of the show ended. Larry Hagman, the creepy Larry Hagman, he was J.R. Ewing, who had many reasons for people to hate him. He had double-crossed many business associates. He called his wife, Sue Ellen, who was played by Linda Gray, a slut, had her committed to a sanitarium so he could take custody of his infant son. Anybody was a suspect because everybody hated JR, but the way they ended the show, there was a mystery as to who did this. And there's Larry Hagman lying on the floor, J.R. Ewing. You don't know whether he's going to live or die. And the season of television doesn't resume until October. So you have all these months and months of speculation. Who shot JR? It's one of the most brilliant marketing moves ever made in television. And, this was a period of time where cable was just getting off the ground. So this is March 21st of 1980. ESPN had only started about 6 or 7 months earlier. Some people had HBO in the mid-'70s, but very few people had cable. It was the 4 or 3 really major networks, because Fox wasn't a major network then. It was CBS, which carried the show Dallas, and at the time there was like this urban cowboy thing going on. The movie with John Travolta was very popular, and I was living in Texas at the time. I was living in San Antonio, but this was kind of old hat for us, but this was very attractive to people around the country. Hey, look at what's going on with big money and people in Dallas and the dirty deeds and all that. It was a wildly popular show. And so we had this whole summer of Who Shot JR. I can remember walking past the stands and seeing the cover of People magazine with Larry Hagman's smiling face on it. Who shot JR? And the build-up and build-up and build-up to the point of this. This was Hagman years later talking about what went on that whole summer and through the next months and months before we were able to finally find out who shot JR.
We did a thing at the Palladium. And the Queen Mother, it was her 80th birthday, and she came up, or I came backstage to meet her, and she says, I don't suppose you could tell me who shot JR? I said, no, ma'am, not even for you. And we had 3 episodes before it was revealed who shot, so we had that whole thing building and building and building, and people said, are they going to show it this week, or this next week? And finally, when we did show that, it was like the shot heard around the world. People, airline people, the pilot would say, we know who shot JR. And people were going to restaurants and leaving before the show because they wanted to see that specific show. It was heady days, very heady days. I think it's the highest rating, the second highest. The first highest in the United States was MASH, the end of MASH. The second was Dallas. But Dallas worldwide was just tremendous. It was like 380 million people watched it that they know of, but it was probably a lot more. Yeah. It was huge around the world, and I don't know why.
No, it was just perfect the way CBS did this, and they didn't reveal who shot JR until the episode which aired on November 21st of 1980. So it was exactly 8 months later who pulled the trigger. It was revealed to be Bing Crosby's daughter, Mary Crosby, the character Kristen Shepard. Kristen was JR's scheming sister-in-law and mistress who shot him in a fit of anger. JR did not press charges, as Kristen claimed she was pregnant with his child as a result of their affair. This was, I can't even describe how big a deal this was, as people asked all summer and throughout the fall, who shot JR. The audience in the U.S. was estimated at 83 million people, but as Larry Hagman said, it was well over 300 worldwide. MASH, I think, is the most watched TV show of all time. It was like 120 million people watched that. But, in 1980, they struck gold with Who Shot JR. And if you're old enough to remember that, you'll realize what a big deal that was 45 years ago. If you need something else to make you feel older, which I do not, there is that. Anyway, that's a wrap for me. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.